Express trains are built for trust. 200 passengers share a ribbon of speed and the faith that what they brought aboard will arrive with them. Hand luggage nests above your head. Heavy cases stack in the racks by the doors, and a conductor's glance is supposed to be enough to keep everyone honest. Tonight, we keep the faith but verify. The call came 10 minutes after departure from Milan. A courier reported that his gray hardshell case, identical to half a dozen others on the platform, had been swapped. His contained a sealed evidence pouch for a Zurich court, a flash drive, a ledger, and the sort of ink that can drown a career. The one now sitting in the rack outside carriage 7, he said, weighed wrong by the hand and rattled like cheap wheels. He didn't open it, he knew better. He called the rail police instead. On a moving train, the crime scene is a corridor of decisions. We have finite stops, finite doors, and a timetable that works against the impulsive. You can't sell a suitcase out the window. You have to live with it, above your seat, between your knees, or in that shadow just past the vestibule where the camera never quite sees. Our detective has to find one case among 200 travelers who all carry reasons for anonymity. Business, love, shame, or the wish to arrive as someone else. We'll map scuffs and stickers, weigh wheels by the sound they make over aluminum treads, and read the residue that people forget to wipe off. Bakery flour, airline chalk, hotel pet hair. We'll watch how hands move at stops, when the carriage lurch hides a switch, and how a thief trusts time more than luck. No ghosts, no destiny, only a train where every rack tells on the last person who touched it. If you're ready, step into the aisle. Keep your ticket out. Don't touch anyone else's handle. The express wore its promise like a sheen. Chrome trims squared, carpets vacuumed into rows. A timetable printed in type so precise it felt like a contract. I boarded at the last door before departure, the platform clock at Milano Centrale blinking 1928, and the vibration of the locomotive already threaded up through my boots. Rail police badge under my jacket. I took the steps 2 at a time and met the conductor in the vestibule between carriage 7 and the catering car. "Detective Brooks?" he asked. He was compact, starched, and carrying a palm-sized logbook as if it were scripture. "Dana," I said. "You're Moreau. Etienne Moreau." His French accent softened the edges of his English. "Route? Milan to Zurich to Basel to Paris, for intermediate stops before Zurich. We depart now." Behind him, the chimes sounded, doors thumped, and the train leaned into motion. Passengers steadied themselves by the rails. Wheel sets took to the track with a settling clatter that always made me think of coins shaken into neat stacks. "The courier?" I asked. "In carriage 7, door B rack," Moreau said. He reported a swap before we closed the doors. "He has not opened anything." "Good," I said. "Show me." We stepped through to door B, a narrow vestibule that opened on one side to the rack and on the other to the aisle. The rack was a metal grid with 2 levels. The upper shelf for the muscular and optimistic, the lower for pragmatists and bad backs. A gray hardshell stood at knee height, flush to the pillar. It was the color the market calls graphite, and the rest of the world calls every suitcase in Europe. The courier waited with his hands visible, palms up to prove he'd kept them clean. Late 30s, clean-shaven, the careful haircut of a man who took meetings in mirrors. "Alan Mercer," he said, voice clipped. I called the moment I realized. "Walk me through," I said. He pointed to the case at the base of the rack. "That is not mine, though it wants to be. Mine is a gray polycarbonate, brand Travel Max, size 68 centimeters, about 22 kilos. This one is lighter by the hand. My handle has a faint nick on the left screw cap. This one," he paused, and his mouth pressed into a line. "No nick. And what's in yours?" I asked. "Sealed evidence pouch for a Zurich court," he said. "A flash drive, a ledger, inks that would survive a flood. I deliver, I sign, I sleep. If I fail, well, I don't." The carriage lurched slightly as we took a turnout. He didn't grab for the rack. "Good hands. Good training," Moreau added. He placed his case in this rack, door B, then stood to the glass to call his office. When he turned back, he insists the weight was wrong. He did not open. "That's the part you did right," I said. To Moreau, What's our camera coverage? Vestibule's covered, he said, tapping his logbook. Aisles 2. We have a blind strip 1.2 meters at the rack base where the pillar masks the view. The lower shelf is partially occluded. A blind strip. It always starts with the geometry. Okay, I said. We fixed the scene. I pulled on gloves and took out my phone. Photograph wide. Photograph close. Angles on the handle, the telescopic shaft, the screw caps. The zipper pulls were generic paddle types. The wheels had the usual rubberized rims with faint road rash. I set a small evidence band, a numbered, tamper-evident strap, around the handle and clicked it shut, the red tab bright against the gray. I didn't open bags on moving trains if I could avoid it. Explosives lived in the same statistical neighborhood as carelessness, and I was not interested in visiting either before we had specialists. Protocol, I told Mercer. We'll treat that as the suspect case. We will not open it until we can clear it at the next stop. When is that? Mercer asked. Como San Giovanni, Morrow said. 32 minutes. I nodded. That window is a risk and a gift. If someone wants to finish a swap, they'll wait for the lurch at arrival, when everyone's eyes go to the platform. We'll be watching then. Across the aisle, a boy traced 2 fingers along the window to draw a fog comet. His mother handed him a napkin. The world outside receded into evening. Platform lamps beginning to wake. The first graffiti-laced retaining walls sliding by like subtitles. Mr. Mercer, I said, do you have anything distinctive on your case? Even small. He took out his phone and scrolled. Hotel lobby yesterday. He handed me a photo. The same gray rectangle standing at attention on polished marble. On the underside, just visible in the reflection, a faint diagonal mark like a crayon's memory. Blue customs chalk, he said, from a random inspection last month. Also, inside the inner gusset at the zipper tape, I have a strip of discrete tamper tape. If anyone opened the liner, it would show. I photographed it when I applied it. I filed that under owner verification later. Good. We won't rely on memory alone. To Moreau, I said, rack freeze. I want staff at each carriage door with phones. No bag moves without a photo and the seat number of whoever touches it. He didn't flinch. I can do that. Log times, I added, down to the minute. Procedure is dignity for a train. It lets everyone keep their face while we take their variables. He moved off to brief his team. I crouched at the rack and brushed a magnetized powder lightly along the crossbar where the case had slid. The particles adhered in smears where oily skin had made a film. Near the pillar, the adherence was heavier, as if someone had braced there with a thumb. Tiny bright flecks caught the vestibule lighting. Aluminum microflakes that told the same story as sanded knuckles. A hurried drag along metal. I photographed the smears with a scale card, then capped the brush. Wait, I asked Mercer. 22 kilos yesterday, he said. I carry a scale. I do not weigh by vanity. Understood. I lifted the suspect handle gently, just enough to feel the inertia through the telescopic shaft. The handle's stiffness was new or well-maintained. The mass below was not 22 kilos. My shoulders keep their own ledger after 10 years on trains. Lighter by a lot, I said. From the aisle, a passenger stepped closer. A man with sandy hair and a seat tag clipped to his backpack. 7C18. He pointed, tentative. Sorry, he said. Mine looks exactly like that one. Travel Max. Gray. I'm Noah. He smiled without using his eyes. Not sure which is mine now. Then don't touch either, I said, not looking away from the case. He retreated a half step, hands up. The smile stayed. I wanted to see the cuffs of his jacket. Later, I swabbed the suspect handle with a small foam tip and sealed it. A ghost of citrus drifted up. A solvent note, the scent of someone who'd been removing adhesives recently. Citrus solvent, I said. Adhesive remover. Within a few hours, from the smell. Mercer folded his arms tightly, like he was cold. They planned for the sticker ghosts, he said. Maybe, I said. Or maybe they removed their own stickers and got enthusiastic. I turned to the aisle. Mr. Mercer, Take a seat where you can see this rack. Do not stare at it like a lighthouse. Just be a man on a train. And me? Said the man with the clip tag, Noah. Do I wait here? You take your seat, I said. When I want you, I'll ask. His smile dimmed. I made a quick sketch on my pad. Vestibule rectangle, rack position, pillar, camera cones. The blind strip at the base was exactly where a hand could ghost a swap while a carriage hiccup masked the motion. The lurch at departure had been one moment. The lurch at arrival would be another. And between Milan and Como we had 32 minutes to make the train behave like a sealed jar without making the passengers feel like specimens. I radioed the onboard CCTV operator. Mark the vestibules, I said. I want continuous playback saved from departure to Como on carriage 7-door B. Note any hand on any handle, stills to my feed. Copy, came the reply, a man's voice under the hum of climate control. Dana, Moreau said, returning, breath faintly visible in the overcooled vestibule air. Rack freezes in place. Staff instructed to photograph any movement and take seat numbers. I have posted an attendant at each door. Good, I said. We have geometry and time. We'll add sound at Como. Sound? Mercer asked. The sound wheels make, I said. Every case sings when it rolls over a ribbed threshold. We'll listen. The train gathered itself for the long run out of the city. In the reflection of the vestibule glass, I saw my own face looking like it always does when the job is still clean. Alert, not yet tired. Beyond the glass, apartments flared by, then darkened. Industrial lots gave way to the long black ribbon toward Como. I adjusted the evidence band one more time, felt the click with my thumb, and stepped back. The case sat there, blank and obliging, exactly the way a decoy wants to be. Como in 32, Moreau said again, as if repeating the number could pin it down. 32, I said. That's our first test window. The aisle swelled as a pair of passengers moved past in a practiced dance of elbows and apologizing smiles. Somewhere down car, a child laughed. Somewhere up car, a chime sounded to announce coffee in the catering car. I checked my watch and wrote the time next to a single line. Window for second switch. Arrival lurch at Como. Trains make corridors of decisions. We had fixed the first one. The next would come with brakes, doors, and the way human hands behave when they think no one is looking. Don't touch anyone else's handle, I said, mostly to the air, and took my place across the aisle to watch the case that wasn't, the courier who waited, and the faces that would tell me how the evening wanted to end. The line between order and improvisation on an express train is about 3 coaches long. By the time we passed the last of the freight yards and the city thinned to silhouettes, Moreau had turned my rack freeze into ritual. Attendants in navy vests stood at vestibules with company phones open to camera apps and a practiced apology in 4 languages. When a passenger reached for a handle, a hand went up, a picture was taken, a seat number collected, and the world nudged forward again. No one likes being watched, but they like losing their luggage less. I used the lull to widen the circle. Gray Travel Max, 68 centimeters, model line with the dimpled polycarbonate, the European plague. We find them all, I told Moreau. We photograph, we map microfeatures, we bring the noise floor down. He nodded and loaned me a junior attendant with quick feet and the kind of memory that makes good witnesses. We started in carriage 7 and worked outward like a tide. 12 candidates in total emerged from the stroll. 4 in 7, 5 in 8, 2 strays in 6 that had migrated when couples traded seats with a family, and a single specimen in 9 rolling on a pilgrim's errand to Paris. Each time, the attendant would smile, lift a brow. Permission to photograph your case? Each time I'd crouch, glove, capture, handle, wheels, zipper pulls, the 4 little screws that anchored the telescopic shaft. I'd learned on night trains that people will let you photograph anything if you kneel to do it. Humility is better than authority at close range. Microfeatures separate the living. We'll wear tells stories like shoe leather. On the first candidate, a respectable gray that had been in more hotel rooms than its owner, I saw a faint scalloping on the rear left tread, the kind of flat spot you get when a wheel rubs against a curb while the rest of the case is lifted. Another had a taut handle but a shaft whose paint chips clustered around the lower screw caps. Someone had replaced them once and let the driver slip. Zipper pulls were a minefield. Replacements abound, but the discoloration along the plating tells you about hand oils and cleaners and whether the owner ever watched a packing video on the internet. I worked back to our suspect. Close, with the vestibule fluorescence humming, the differences sharpened. Rear right will showed a flatter where band over a quarter of the circumference, distinct from the others. Someone had rolled it hard with the handle extended, letting that will do more than its share. On the telescopic handle, the left and right screw caps were missing, two tiny black circles of absence, while the screws themselves sat exposed, crossheads slightly bowed. I photographed the bowed heads with a scale, then shifted my angle to catch the light on the case flank. There it was, a faint rectangle of residue near the upper corner, tilted so it made a shallow V with the seam. The ghost of a sticker long removed, a transfer label's memory imprinted by its own glue. Adhesives never leave entirely. In the right light, with the right angle, they confess. I made a note, sticker ghost V-tilt upper right quadrant, then lifted the handle again and felt for the bite of the shaft slides. Knew. Whoever prepared this case wanted it to pass the glance test. They missed that missing screw caps are a glance trap for the right eyes. Detective. The junior attendant leaned into the vestibule. Seat 7C18, the gentleman with the backpack, says again he may have the same case. He looks bothered. I know, I said, and asked the attendant to keep him seated with a cup of water and a story about routine checks. I called up the hotel photo on Mercer's phone again and zoomed until the pixels grew soft. The blue customs chalk on the underside drew a faint Z, diagonal and careless like a bored officer's flourish. The inner liner photo, taken by a man who made habits of paranoia, showed a roll of discreet tamper tape tucked behind the zipper gusset, its printed microtext like a field of raindrops. Mr. Mercer, I said, if you're right and your case is elsewhere on board, it's not invisible. Chalk transfers. Wheels keep what they roll through, and racks shed what they receive. We will find the trail. He nodded, but I could see the arithmetic in his eyes. Minutes to Como, minutes to relief or disaster. I crouched back to the rack bar where the suspect had sat and ran my magnet brush again with a lighter touch, as if dusting a moth's wing. The powder found the same smears I'd seen. A hand steadying a drag. Then a few new gleams popped free as I feathered the edges. More aluminum flecks came up, bright as fish scales, and I teased them into an evidence fold. Microflakes like that can come from the case itself when it scuffs a pillar, but they also come from the bar when someone scrapes the same path twice. Lift, slide, replace. I wanted to know which, but that belonged to later in the lab. For now, patterns. I worked the suspect handle with another swab fresh foam, clean vial, and sealed a second sample of the citrus solvent scent, the sweet bitter note you get from adhesive remover wipes. They were nearly ubiquitous in travel kits, but timing matters. Solvent sharpness fades within hours. Whoever had been scrubbing sticker ghosts had done it today. Across 3 coaches, the 12 gray cases gave me a polite, stubborn chorus of sameness. That makes people reckless. They count on your fatigue. So you force your eyes to count the differences until they step forward on their own. In carriage 8, door Iraq, the one opposite the catering car's hum, a case sat with all the accumulated dignity of use. Wheels polished by distance, base dotted with road grit. I noted the seam, the screws, factory paint intact, the zipper pulls, one aftermarket, shinier. I crouched, mirror angled under the base, and something the size of a comet mote flashed in the vestibule light. Blue. Not a swipe this time, but 2 discrete motes embedded in the grease around the wheel axle, the thick black that accumulates the way subway dust accumulates on cuffs. The motes were wrong in the right way. I set my mirror aside and leaned closer without touching. Along the lower edge of the case, where the shell meets the bumper, a faint, even dusting of white lay like mist, too fine for salt, too bright for drywall, clinging to the microscopic texture of polycarbonate. I held my pencil near it and let a breath run across the surface. The dust wavered, stuck. Flour, I said, quiet to myself, and photographed both blue and white with scale, angle, and note. The junior attendant checked the manifest. Carriage 8, door rack, he read. Heavy use at Milan by a tour group returning from a culinary expo. 2 checked the rack space while waiting for seats, then moved on at departure. Names? He read them off. I circled one. *** Rhea Donovan ***, seat 8 times 10 to the power of -22, because she had a gray case already tagged in the system from boarding photographs. Donovan's seat, when I reached it, held a woman in a linen jacket flipping a magazine with the musculature of someone who does Pilates at 6 in the morning. Her case sat overhead, label strap neat, combination lock looking as if it had just been purchased. "Ms. Donovan?" I asked. "May I photograph your case? Is there a problem?" She smiled like a student answering a question she already knew was on the test. "Routine mapping," I said, and she nodded. The wheels were well behaved. The handle screw caps in place, factory painted, no marks. If this was Mercer's case, it had had an unlikely spa day this morning. I shot the underside with the mirror, looking for a sticker ghost. Airline transfer marks leave shadows when you peel them at the gate or break the habit of letting baggage handlers carry your shame. Nothing. The base told its story clean. "Did you fly recently?" I asked, conversational like the weather. "Last week," she said. "Istanbul." I checked this bag. It didn't have the ghost an airline would leave on the base. People who fly often keep ghosts like sailors keep tattoos. Either she was lying, or she'd replaced something today. "Thank you," I said, and moved on. When I checked my notes against Mercer's hotel photo again, the blue Z-chalk, the discreet tamper tape, I felt the corners aligning. Somewhere between the rack and the catering car, flour had kissed plastic. Somewhere between Milan and now, 2 blue motes had gone for a ride on axle grease. The blind strip at Carriage 7's base had told me I'd missed a hand. Carriage 8 told me whose hand had succeeded. At seat 7C, 18, Noah Klein fidgeted like he was tuning an invisible violin. He watched me the way people watch doctors, wanting a cure, hoping the diagnosis was for the person in the next bed. When I came near, he did the smile again. "Detective," he said, "everything okay with the cases?" "Everything is in motion," I said. "Which case do you believe is yours?" He pointed toward the rack as if from a distance. "It's the same as that one," he said. "I'm just not sure which is which." "Then we'll make them sing," I said. "At Como." He blinked, uncomprehending, then nodded as if music had always been the plan. I finished my circuit and returned to Mercer, who had sat as told and stared as not told. "We have 12 lookalikes," I said. "Yours leaves traces. Chalk, flour, wear on screws. The suspect by door B wears citrus and vanity." "And mine?" he asked. "On this train," I said. "Closer than you think." The intercom chimed. The voice was smooth, practiced, and comfort itself. "Signore e signori. Next stop Como San Giovanni in approximately 12 minutes. Please prepare to disembark." 12 minutes. Enough to stage a test. Enough to count hands in a lurch. I looked at Moreau and tipped my chin at the ribbed aluminum threshold between vestibule and aisle. "Ready the threshold," I said. "We're going to listen for a rumble." Ribbed aluminum looks innocent. A tidy rectangle laid across the mouth of a vestibule, its grooves catching the grit and rain and stories of 1,000 shoes. But to luggage, it's a tuning fork. Every wheel that crosses it plays the chord of its life. Flat spots, axles, bearings, and laziness. You just have to listen without being seduced by the crowd. "Etiquette first," I told Moreau. "We are not humiliating anyone. We are timing wheels." He had already stationed his attendants at both ends of Carriage 7. Company phones set to record in video with the microphone gain nudged up. I planted my own recorder on the floor, microphone low, angled toward the threshold to catch the contact. The junior attendant, bright-eyed and unflappable, carried a clipboard like a metronome. "Ladies and gentlemen," Moreau announced in 4 languages, gentle as rain, "for safety and identification, we ask that if you have a gray Travelmax suitcase, you bring it to the vestibule for a brief roll test. We will not open bags." We will note seat numbers and return them immediately. Thank you for your patience. You'd think people would resist. But trains create fraternities of inconvenience. One by one, the candidates came. Polite nods, worried smiles, the clatter of domestic life on casters. I marked the order: Specimen A, 7A42, B, 8D05, C, 9F, 10, and so on, the alphabet filling with ordinary. Procedure, I said to each owner. Lift by the handle, extend the shaft, roll across the threshold toward me, stop, roll back. Twice. They did. The wheels sang. Specimen A stuttered, a double rattle characteristic of older twin-axle assemblies. Specimen B shared the same pensioner's cough. I didn't need to compare anything to Mercer yet. The wrong songs eliminate themselves. Then Noah Klein, seat 7C18, arrived, his case like a twin to the suspect resting under my evidence band. He had the look of man doing a favor for a neighbor he intends to move away from. Just to be sure, he said, almost cheerful. He extended the handle with a crisp click and rolled. The recorder took it. A smooth run on the forward pass, then a shy little hiss on the way back, as if the bearings sighed in reverse. No 3-beat anything. I glanced toward Mercer, whose eyes narrowed and then disciplined themselves back into nothing. Again, I said. Klein rolled once more. The audio matched the suspect's first take earlier, no rumble. Note, Klein is not equal to Mercer. The suspect itself, under band, chaperoned by me, went next. Moreau lifted, I steadied, we crossed the threshold. The recording was clean. Bearings new or recently cleaned. No flat spot declaring itself like a guilty tooth. It performed like a bag desperate to be furniture. 2 others, the junior attendant said, from 7A42 and 8D05, as requested. We took them, logged them, listened. The twin-axle rattles that had sounded like loose cutlery earlier repeated. I let them go with thanks. Between pulls I kept one eye on the rack. Hands have micro-habits. Guilty ones lurk at the edge of the vestibule, ready to touch when a glance gives permission. Elise Braun, 6B11, hovered twice with a tote bag, rummaging with the aimless accuracy of someone trying to look purposeless. The corner of a packet flashed from inside, white, squared, plastic foil. Adhesive remover wipes sometimes come in stacks like that. She caught me watching and offered a wan smile. Motion sickness, she said. Those help with that? I asked. Everything helps, she said, and stepped back. We crossed the hours line. The intercom gave the ritual that precedes arrival. A bell, then a compensation of the tone that made the cabin's air feel thinner. Como's platform lights threaded themselves in the windows like beads. You could feel the train preparing to become a building. Mercer, I said, you're recording from Milan. Play it. He cued it on his phone, held low. The sound was unmistakable once you knew it. 3-beat rumble, spaced like a low drum practicing time. Ta-ta-ta, recurring every rotation from a flat on a wheel rim. The cadence was steady, the amplitude small but distinctive. I marked the interval in my head, counting silently to fix the rhythm. That's the one, he said. Good, I said. Now we hunt that note. I moved us to carriage 8, door A, the flower rack. Bring me the gray from 8 times 10 to the power of -22, I told the junior attendant. Rhea Donovan appeared, composed as before, case in hand, lock shining like new enamel. Again? She asked, amused. Again, I said. She rolled forward. The threshold answered like the edge of a cymbal brushed by a mallet. Smooth, then, beneath it, the faint drum. Ta-ta-ta. I raised my palm. Back. The beat returned, low, consistent, indifferent to our attention. Once more, I said. The cadence held, the same little stutter every cycle like a practiced liar sticking to their story too precisely. I felt the weight through the handle when I guided it. The inertial lag told me dense load, north of 15 kilos. I didn't need numbers to know that this bag had eaten. Mercer's jaw tensed. I looked at the screw caps, factory painted and perfect. At the shafts, no driver marks. At the zipper pulls, one aftermarket but aged. The underside? I slid my mirror and saw only the usual abrasion, no airline ghost. And yet the wheel sang Mercer's song. "Where did you buy this?" I asked, conversational. "Online," she said. "Months ago." "May I see you open it?" I asked, still gentle. She tilted her head. "I don't see why that's necessary. You said you weren't opening bags." "I said I wasn't opening bags without reason," I said. "I now have reason." "I don't consent," she said. Her refusal could be innocence. In my line, the righteous and the guilty use the same rights. The difference is their pulse. Her radial beat at her wrist wanted to be a hummingbird. She tried to hide it with a magazine again. The magazine had too much ink. "Understood," I said. "In that case, I am seizing the bag pending consent or warrant at the next stop. We won't open it before explosives clearance. We will document chain of custody." "That's absurd," she said. The pitch of her voice went higher, the human equivalent of a kettle nearing boil. "Noted," I said. I marked the recording. Specimen H, Donovan. 3-beat rumble matches Mercer/Milan. I added tilt. With 2 fingers under the handle and my boot toe stabilizing the base, I eased the case to a 10-degree angle. Heavy bags show late caster break. Light ones fold early. Donovan's broke late, the weight reluctant to shift. Heavier than the suspect by a distance. We repeated the threshold test for the remaining candidates. 2 more, 7A42, 8D05, had the twin-axle rattle, old wheels complaining of work. The pilgrim's case heading to Paris hummed like a refrigerator and was eliminated with a smile and a blessing. None of them gave me Mercer's drum. The doors chimed. We kissed the platform at Como with a mild slap, the way a swimmer taps a pool wall before the turn. Bodies rose, hands reached for straps, and the vestibules became the human equivalent of a school of fish reacting to a shadow. I already had an attendant posted at door B of carriage 7, camera up, posture neutral. "No live switches," I had told him. "Your presence is the lock." From my position at the edge of the aisle, I watched the rack as much as I watched the people. A gloved hand, thin liner type, reached to steady the suspect case as the carriage took the arrival lurch. The glove brushed the handle, not to claim but to support, an instinctive motion taught by catering work. Save the spill, keep the glass steady. The hand withdrew quickly when the attendant's camera I turned. The glove's brand, if my eye was not bragging, matched the box I'd seen in the catering car earlier. "Unpowdered, food service." "Marco," I radioed, "you're missing gloves?" "2 pairs. The attendant in the catering car replied, annoyed. "Shouldn't happen." "Noted," I said, watching Elise Braun as she returned from the platform with a tote bag that now had a fresh, unnatural bulge. When she slid into her seat, the corner of a white packet winked again. She caught me catching it, lifted the tote's strap with a little theatrical shrug. People communicate with props, and buried her nose in a packet of ginger chews for nausea. She wasn't the rock. She was the moss that told you the rock's always been there. We held at Como for 3.5 minutes. That is just long enough for cowards to change their minds and professionals to stick to their plan. Nothing moved in the rack except the collective intention of hands preparing to when my back turned. I didn't turn. The doors closed. The train took a deep breath and pushed north. As the platform slid away, the threshold returned to being a strip of metal and not a confessional. I collected the recorder, saved the files, labeled each with seat, time, and specimen letter. You cannot reconstruct a sound from memory. You can only compare it to what you captured when it was honest. Summary? I told Moreau, low enough that only the vestibule heard. The suspect is a decoy, light and clean. Klein's bag sings like the suspect. Donovan's rolls like Mercer's 3-beat rumble. Flower and blue moat support that her case rode under the flower rack. But her base lacks airline sticker ghosts. Someone laundered the outside and left the song in the wheels. "And the woman with the wipes?" he asked. "Braun," I said. "She steadies, scrubs, acts as if she's sick on command. She and Klein smell like a team. Donovan may be a buyer or a mark." Mercer drifted in, hope managing itself with discipline. Is that my rumble? He asked, audible hope tucked behind the joke. It's a match, I said, but we don't open anything on a moving train. So we wait, he said. We prepare, I corrected. Lugano next. We use mass without scales. Mass without scales? Moreau asked. The scale you already own, I said, tapping the strap retractor at the rack. Gravity and a spring. Everything on a train talks if you give it the right stage. I logged the next window, the next test, and the faces. Wheels had sung. At Lugano, the straps would speak. Arrival compresses manners. The bell chimed, the brakes sang their dry hymn, and the express leaned into the station like a tall man stooping to pass under a low door. In the vestibules, bodies lifted together, and for a moment every hand in carriage 7 belonged to the same animal, the one that reaches for handles. I'd posted an attendant at door B with his camera already open. The rule was simple: photograph, seat number, brief apology. People complied, even when the apology had to be in the exact wrong language for their mood. I watched from an angle that let me see both the rack and faces. You learn to patrol expressions the way you patrol seams. Klein was already in the vestibule when the doors slid open. He'd acquired a luggage strap, a cheap nylon loop with a plastic buckle, that I hadn't seen on him earlier. He held it like a prop until he could decide whether it was a tool. Sir, the attendant said softly as Klein edged nearer the rack. Photo, please. Of what? Klein's smile was too eager, the kind people practice in bathroom mirrors. Your case, if you touch it, the attendant said, still soft. He raised the phone. The lens made every intention expensive. Klein didn't touch the case. He touched the strap, threading it casually through his fingers as if to demonstrate he, too, believed in order. Under the fluorescent light, I saw something else. A tiny smear of blue near the edge of his cuff, the kind that hides until a particular angle of light calls it out. The color wasn't denim or ink. It was chalk blue, faint, dusty, and not the costume for a man who habitually stayed clean. Mr. Klein, I said, stepping into his line of sight. Where'd you pick up the strap? Bought it at Milan, he said too quickly. Vendor at the station. People steal things. He made it a joke. It didn't land. You didn't board with it, I said. He blinked. I must have stuffed it in my backpack. Must have, I said, and titled my head in the way that lets a man hear his pulse without touching his wrist. Behind him, Elise Braun returned from the platform. She kept her tote high and hugged tight, as if her shoulders had practiced this posture in front of a dance mirror. She moved like someone performing inconspicuous. When she opened the tote to remove a crumpled packet of ginger chews, I caught a stack of white plastic foil squares bulging at one corner. Adhesive remover wipes advertised themselves by the way they refused to compress. Feeling better? I asked as she passed. She added drama to her sigh. The sway, she said. It's always the sway. You were fine before Como, I said. Sometimes it gets me late. Her smile had collision damage around the edges. I nodded to the camera attendant at door B. He read it and kept his lens where it hurt. The doors slid open the last few inches and the train lurched, the small jolt that shakes good intentions loose. In that stutter, I saw what I'd felt earlier. A gloved hand, thin liner, dark, reached in from the side and steadied the suspect case by the handle, a gesture anyone who'd spent time in catering would have in their body. Thumb and first 2 fingers, a light pinch, a brace and release to keep a weight from shifting while plates passed overhead. Photo, I said, and my attendant moved like a gull to the glint shutter seat tag. The glove vanished into the crowd, pulled off, stuffed in a pocket by someone who didn't want to be the only one wearing gloves while everyone else pretended the world was clean. The flow reversed, people out, air in. Como is a polite stop, just long enough to tempt, not long enough to confess. I used the platform pause to ping the CCTV operator on my radio. Door B, carriage 7, I said. Roll back the last 30 seconds on the vestibule cam. Slow by half. Hold the lower third of the frame. A beat later, my phone vibrated with a still. The crop showed the glove at the exact moment of contact. thumb depressing the handle button just enough to flatten the spring. A logo tag flashed at the glove's wrist, 2 tiny lines of sans serif. From the catering car earlier, I remembered a box of food service liners with the same bullheaded minimalism of branding. My memory isn't better than a photograph. It just gets the first vote. Catering, I radioed. Inventory check. Missing 2 pairs, came Marco's voice, already angry at himself. I swear we had them before departure. Brand. Unpowdered service liners. Black, he said. Same as always. Copy, I said, and saved the still to a folder tagged for later chain of custody. Klein hovered, strap still in hand. When his glance broke from the rack to check whether I was still watching, I saw the flicker of calculation. Could he attach a strap quickly at the next stop and rebrand a case as his? The strap would let him claim ownership by pretext. Oh, see? Mine has the strap. A trick as old as markets. The blue chalk on his cuff told another story, one that had started before we left Milan. He caught me cataloging his sleeve and did the long roll of his forearm that men do when they'd like to hide their cuffs in their own shadows. Spill something? I asked. What? On your cuff, I said mildly. Bathroom soap? Or chalk? He looked down reflexively and made the mistake of brushing at it. Chalk smears become confessions when you try to erase them. Laundry powder, he said. Packed in a hurry. Of course, I said. Happens. We held for 3.5 minutes. The tension was a membrane. People pressed against it with their eyes and their props. Donovan did not appear. She remained in carriage 8 with her magazine and her composure. Braun dabbed at her temples with a wipe as if you could remove nausea with solvent. Klein rehearsed a theft he would not dare attempt with my camera across from him. Doors closing, the announcement said, and the membrane snapped back into the car. Como slid past. The express took a breath and became a train again. Roll CCTV forward, I told the operator. From closing to 30 seconds after. Flag any hand contact at door B rack. Copy. I stepped into the aisle to where the natural light of the window met the vestibule's clinical white. I called to Moreau. 2 persons of interest, I said softly, so only the vestibule heard. Noah Klein, 7C18, and Elise Braun, 6B11. Reasons? He asked, already writing. Klein is orbiting the rack with new tools. He missed the memo that props don't make people. He has blue transfer on his cuff that looks a lot like customs chalk. Braun's got solvent wipes and the hands of a person who's done this before. We have a glove steadying the suspect. Brand matches your missing catering liners. She knows how to touch things. He knows how to sell them. Moreau's eyebrow traveled, then settled. We keep them seated? We keep them observed, I said. Don't spook. If they're a pair, fear makes them theatrical. Theater makes them useful. He nodded and parceled out the task along the aisle. One attendant to make retail weather around Braun, offer coffee, offer ginger tea, ask after motion sickness. Another to sit 3 rows behind Klein and fail to be invisible. I returned to Mercer, who hadn't moved except to rehearse not moving. We've picked our shadows, I said. Your bag is likely in carriage 8 door A, and its song is yours. We will not open until we can do it properly. He exhaled like a man tasting air after a long tunnel. Then what now? Now we measure without scales, I said. At Lugano. He looked at the straps at the rack as if divining rods might hang from them. You can tell how heavy it is by? The retractor in the rack strap, I said. Heavier loads pull more force. The spring returns slower when you unhook it. Yesterday your video shows your strap returning in 1.8 seconds in a Milan hotel rack. We time this rack now with controls. If the suspect is truly light, 12 to 14 kilos, the strap will snap quick, about 1.1 to 1.3 seconds. Your real case will damp the return. On a moving train? He asked, half skeptical, half awed. The train's movement is constant enough, I said. We're comparing relative times on the same hardware, and we'll cross-check with a tilt angle test. Heavy cases will show a later caster break. He nodded, the kind of nod people give physics when it starts acting like a colleague instead of a rumor. As we cleared Como's throat and took to the dark seam of track toward Lugano, the cabin lights adjusted one notch warmer. The faces in the window glass noticed their own ghosts. I made another pass by the rack and knelt to collect one more sample from the suspect handle, insurance. Citrus molecules evaporate with stories. I prefer mine in vials. On my way back to my seat across from the rack, I paused at the catering car's door. Marco stood behind his counter with the posture of a man working out how an inventory sheet becomes an apology. Brand confirmation, I said. He produced the glove box. The logo tag, 2 sans serif lines, matched the still on my phone. I took a quick photo, box, brand, Marco's resigned face. Chain of custody begins long before court. Anyone from passenger service access these? I asked. We share a storeroom, he said. But this box was under my counter. Anyone could lean in, I said. They'd need just one hand and the nerve to look like they belonged. He nodded, thinking of faces. The woman from 6B11, he said slowly. She asked for hot water. Twice. Braun, I said. He flinched at the name as if I'd just told him a ghost's real title. Back in 7, Klein had put the strap away but held his hands in his lap as if they missed the feel of a loop. He looked like he wanted to change carriages and knew better than to ask. Braun had expelled the last of her nausea with theater's efficiency and now stared at the back of the seat in front of her as if it were the stage door that never opens when you most need it to. ETA to Lugano? I asked Morrow. 17 minutes, he said. Good, I said. Set 2 attendants for the strap timing. One runs the timer, one observes hands. We take 2 controls, a known 15-kilo case and an empty rack. Then we time the suspect rack with the suspect case present. No one touches the straps but us. Understood. And have the junior attendant check Klein's boarding photos for that strap, I added. If he didn't board with it, it's a story we can weigh. We moved as the train moved, efficiently, politely, with the cord of purpose looping us together. The aisle's conversations resumed their polite conspiracy. The wheels beneath us recited their mantra in long, even breaths. Between Como and Lugano, the truth settled like dust in a beam of vestibule light. It was there if you stood at the right angle, if you let your eyes adjust, if you stopped wanting clever and started wanting accurate. Next test window in Lugano. I wrote at the top of my pad. Under it, Klein blue chalk on cuff. Braun wipes, glove proximity, hot water visits. Suspect case, citrus, missing screw caps. Donovan 3-beat rumble, hold for mass and scar checks. I underlined the last item twice. We had a song. Next we'd get a weight without scales. Then, if the numbers behaved, we'd ask the only questions that matter on trains. Who touched what when, and why they thought no one would hear it. Physics behaves on trains out of courtesy. It knows you're busy. Give it a repeatable surface and a clock and it will meet you halfway, even at 140 kilometers an hour. Positions, I told Morrow. We set up at door B, carriage 7, our suspect rack. The strap ran from a spring cassette mounted high to a hook at hip level. Its return speed changed with load. We would time 3 things: the strap on an empty rack, the strap with a control case we knew to be 15 kilograms, and the strap with the suspect case sitting where Mercer said his had sat. The junior attendant, our human metronome, had a phone timer ready, thumb poised. Another attendant filmed a close-up of the strap hook with a ruler taped vertically beside it. I'd learned to double record everything. One device for sound and timestamps, one for the visual of the strap's travel. In the confusion of later, certainty lives in redundancy. First, empty, I said. I unhooked the strap and let it climb. The spring sang its high, tidy whine and the fabric snapped home. 0 load return. 0.7 seconds. The junior read, thumb stopping the timer with a reflex that would have impressed a pianist. We repeated twice. 0.72, 0.69. I wrote the mean. It's happy empty, I said. Good. I nodded to the control case. A blue fabric number someone in staff had logged at 15 kilograms this morning because I ask for such favors often. We placed it on the lower rack exactly inboard of the suspect position, hooked the strap through its handle, drew it to the same mark on our ruler, all variables declared, all choices photographed. Release, I said. The strap rode back, obedient and slower, as the spring swallowed the fabric in a controlled swallow. 1.31 seconds, the junior said. Again, 1.29, 1.34. I wrote 1.31 plus or minus 0.03 and circled it twice. Now the suspect, I said. We lifted the gray decoy, handle tight, wheels too clean, and set it where Mercer's case had almost certainly lived 35 minutes earlier. I threaded the strap through the handle, pulled it to the mark, and nodded. Release, I said. The strap returned like a runner who sees the finish line and remembers there are people watching. 1.12 seconds. The junior read. Again 1.10. Again 1.13. Call it 1.11 plus or minus 0.02. I said, and let the numbers write the confession I already felt in my shoulder blades. Mr. Mercer, I said without looking up, your hotel video of the same rack yesterday showed 1.8 seconds on return with your case in place? He had the file open like a talisman. Recorded in the lobby, he said. I timed it. 1.8. Same rack make, similar spring behavior, I said. Even without absolutes, our relative comparison holds. This suspect case is not your 22. It's 12 to 14 by the spring's language. A decoy. Of course it's a decoy, Klein said from the edge of the vestibule. Too ready with solidarity to be kind. All these bags look the same. That one's probably empty. It's not empty, I said. It weighs enough to look like luggage. It just doesn't weigh enough to be his luggage. I kept my voice even, not for Klein's sake, but for the microphone. Equanimity ages well on audio. I had one more language to ask the rack to speak. Tilt, I said. Caster wheels tell you how much a case wants to stay upright. If you ease a suitcase back until the front wheels leave the ground, there's a moment when the rear casters break. Stop rotating freely and lock into a roll. Heavy bags resist. Light ones fold. Control first, I said. We tilted the blue 15 kilo to 10 degrees by a protractor I kept for this exact performance. The rear casters broke at about 8 degrees, reluctant but willing. We repeated, got the same within a half degree. Suspect, I said. We tilted. The rear casters broke early at 5, maybe 5.5 degrees, the case eager to flop like a show horse taking the cue before the rider. I logged it. Then, because truth likes being triangulated, I asked for the Donovan case from Carriage 8 to be escorted under watch to our stage. She came with it herself, magazine tucked under her arm as if to imply continuity of leisure. The lock on her case glinted. She must have polished it with her sleeve. We'll return it in 2 minutes, I told her. It's not necessary, she said. I'm comfortable where I am. It is necessary, I said, and gestured at the camera, the crowd, the ritual. We do this for everyone. She relented with a shrug that tried to be European and landed as adolescent. We set her case on the rack, threaded the strap, drew to the mark, released. The spring made a longer swallow. 1.67 seconds, the junior said. Again 1.70. Again 1.66. I wrote 1.68 plus or minus 0.02 and let silence do what rhetoric might ruin. Then the tilt. We angled her case and the rear casters held like a weightlifter's breath, breaking at 9 degrees, stubborn and heavy. I didn't need Mercer's eyes to confirm. He gave me the smallest nod a man can give without moving his neck. Donovan watched all of this as if we were auditioning furniture. Are we finished? She asked. For the moment, I said, and signaled the return escort. The junior attendant took a quick still of her seat tag, the lock, the rack timestamp. Chain of custody is a fence you build high before anyone decides to jump it. When the corridor cleared, I turned to Moreau. Summary. Suspect case performs at 1.11 seconds on strap return, early caster break. Control 15 kilograms returns 1.31. Donovan's returns 1.68, late caster break. The suspect is light. Donovan's is heavy and sings Mercer's 3-beat rumble. The physics put your hand on the right handle even when you're not allowed to. He exhaled in a vowel that existed mostly to agree. And Klein. Klein had sidled close enough to be addressed without raising a voice. He watched the numbers like a man at a horse track hearing odds recalculated out loud. So, he said, cheerful with effort, we can all take our bags and relax? Not yet, I said. There is the small matter of ownership, which is why we move next to non-invasive marks only a true owner can call before seeing them. Proprietary knowledge, Moreau said, catching my drift. Exactly. I turned to Mercer. You mentioned microscars earlier. A 2mm melt scar near your left rear wheel from a cafe heater months ago. A pen ink dot inside the handle well. Do you stand by those? I do, he said, and a shallow driver nick on one screw beneath the handle. Left side. We will verify without opening, I said. I took out a slim borescope, the kind with a gooseneck and a tiny LED that has made more friends on moving trains than any badge. I threaded it through the drain hole in the handle well. Grainy but cooperative, the image swam into focus. The ink dot black, the size of a baby fly, exactly where he said it would be. I caught a still and drew the scope back, then slid a mirror under the case base. There, near the left rear wheel's mount, a tiny glossed oval no bigger than a sesame seed. The plastic skin altered by heat. Melt scar. I photographed with scale. Donovan's face worked through three expressions: confusion, annoyance, calculation, and chose calculation. I bought the case used, she said slowly, as if reading a line she'd been given. This morning, a man in a navy suit sold it to me at Milan. He was in a hurry. I did not look at Klein. The junior attendant did. His eyes widened the way rookies' eyes widen when the plot stops being a hypothesis and starts being a parade. Name? I asked. I didn't ask, she said. Receipt. Cash, she said. It was a bargain. Of course it was, I said. Klein made the mistake of flinching at the phrase navy suit. Micro-flinches are honest. They don't rehearse. The strap in his backpack might as well have waved. Sir, Moreau said, the gentlest cop in Europe, please stay seated for the next leg. Klein tried a different approach, permission-seeking as a cover for desperation. Would it be possible for me to switch to another carriage? Less crowded. He smiled like a man asking if he can open a window that doesn't open. No, I said. Crowds are good for truth. He swallowed in a small way. Braun, 2 rows ahead, folded her wipes as if making origami out of denial. We secured Donovan's case with an evidence band and a tag and placed it under an attendant's knee like a sleeping dog. I radioed ahead. Lugano arrival in under 5. Prepare to receive 1 seized case for explosives clearance only. No opening. Hold owner consent requests. We will pursue a warrant if necessary. Copy, came the reply from the station team. The express threaded the last curve into Lugano. The lake's black glass flashed between buildings like a held breath. Straps and springs had given us numbers. Wheels had given us a song. We had a heavy case that matched Mercer's music, wore his scars, and traveled under the flower rack where his route had passed. We had a light decoy that smelled of citrus and pride. We had a man with a strap he hadn't boarded with and a cuff that confessed chalk, and a woman who steadied the lurch with stolen gloves and bought wipes by the brick. From here, I told Moreau, we shift focus from who owns the suspect to where Mercer's real case is and how it moved. Ownership is a future conversation. Location is the present tense. He nodded, already allocating eyes and radios. Donovan watched us watch her bag and tried on the role of indignant innocent. Klein rehearsed stillness. Braun performed Nausea's encore. The bell chimed. Lugano rose on both sides of us, light, stone, and the brief stage of a platform. Next, I said, closing my notebook on the numbers as if they might escape. We follow the chalk and the flower. Evidence likes to pretend it is shy. It isn't. It just waits for the right light. Between Como and Lugano, I turned the vestibules into a laboratory. The junior attendant carried the kit like a reliquary. Moreau cleared elbows the way a good conductor clears rumors. I snapped off the house fluorescence over door B and let the ambient aisle glow do most of the work. Then I walked the racks with a UV torch, low and slow, a violet comet sweeping an arc 6 inches from metal. Carriage 7, door B, our original stage, lit up the way old theater sceneries do when you finally bring a flashlight to rehearsal. The crossbar where Mercer had placed his case showed a rash of bright freckles, chalk flecks that went from invisible to declarative under UV. Not the neon blast you get from laundry detergents. These were matte, insolent specks that sat where fingers brace and bases sit. I traced them with a gloved fingertip, then caught them with a scalpel blade into a sterile fold. The flecks were blue, the exact undertone of the Z in Mercer's hotel photo. Directly below the bar, along the lower lip of the rack's sheet metal, UV revealed a faint diagonal smear, the residual signature of something dragged at an angle, as if one edge of a case had pivoted across the lip. I photographed the smear with a scale, then ran the magnet brush again. The aluminum microflakes tugged toward the bristles, a small constellation that promised a story later in a lab. For now, I wanted the geometry. A lift at the blind strip, a brace at the pillar, a slide, a set-down, motion practiced in kitchens, not crime novels. Hold there, I told Moreau, and crossed to carriage 8, door A, the rack opposite the catering car, where the hum of the espresso machine set a metronome in my ribs. Under UV, the rack's underside answered like a blackboard that hadn't been fully erased. Along the rear lip, 2 blue motes in a smear of old grease, tiny islands in a dark sea. On the platform edge of the lower shelf, a powdery stipple that glowed thin white. Under white light, it had red as nothing. Under UV, it suggested albumin, starch, flour, the bright stubbornness of kitchen dust that refuses to leave a surface it likes. Manifest, I said to the junior attendant, who had already drafted the list. Carriage 8 door A was used at Milan by a tour group, Culinary Expo returnees, he said, tapping 2 names with his pen. They held space at the rack while seats were sorted, then moved on at departure. Any of our gray travel Macs among them? I asked. He checked the boarding photos. 1 Donovan, 8 times 10 to the power of -22, he said. We logged her case as present on the platform before boarding. Same color, same model. Bring her images, I said. He pulled up the shot. Donovan at the edge of the platform with the case. Base out, hand on handle, a smile like a social alibi. I enlarged the corner where the base met the bumper. No sticker ghost. No rectangle of adhesive memory. The suspect by door B wore a V-shaped ghost. Donovan's base was beautiful the way new is beautiful or laundered is beautiful. Mr. Mercer, I said, drawing him a half-step closer. Remind me of your route to the platform. He played the part a courier must, precise but not theatrical. Taxi dropped at the east entrance. I crossed the main hall past the bakery booths they put up for the expo's last day, then down to track 9. I rolled my case behind 2 tourists who argued about pistachio paste. You hit flour, I said. He nodded, a little ashamed of physics. Couldn't avoid it. The floor white with it. Good, I said. I want the world to smear you sometimes. He didn't laugh. They almost never do when the joke's on the right side of things. I put the UV away and pulled a swab. A light pass along the door, a shelf picked up more of the white. I sealed it. Another swab from the door B crossbar picked up a mouthful of blue. I sealed that too. If a prosecutor asked for magic later, I would hand them starch and calcium carbonate and Prussian blue and suggest they stop calling the periodic table a deck of cards. Catering, I said into the radio. Who cleaned the vestibules at Milan? Marco answered from the counter, indignant in 3 languages. We clean catering, not racks. Passenger service does racks. But everyone tracked flour after the expo. My mop died a baker's death. Copy, I said, and asked for his inventory sheet anyway. He brought it to Dora himself, rolling his eyes at the unromance of paperwork. Gloves, 2 pairs missing, logged with a pencil mark 2 later than I liked. Adhesive remover, 1 small pack unaccounted for. He pointed at the line item and winced. Braun visited twice for hot water, he added, unsolicited. Cup for tea, she said. No tea bag. Noted, I said. Hot water helps lift adhesive when you're impatient. Back in 7, I had the junior attendant run boarding photos for Klein. We looked for anything that bore a strap, a logo, a tell, something to test his bought it at Milan about the luggage strap. In the boarding shot, he wore a backpack with a seat tag and no strap snaking from any pocket. When we froze frames from platform CCTV at Milan Central, outside the shops, there he was at a stall that sold travel sundries. A tray of neck pillows, a stand of stickers, "Not your bag," and a jar of nylon straps like the one he now twined around his fingers like worry beads. "Purchase time," I asked the operator. 1911, he said. 17 minutes before departure. Enough time to invent an identifier for a case you intend to steal and then delineate, I said, and wrote the time next to Klein, prop acquisition. I crossed the aisle to Donovan. She lifted her eyes from the magazine as if it owed her money. "You said you flew last week to Istanbul," I said. "Checked this bag." "That's right," she said. "Airlines leave sticker ghosts on bases the way hotels leave mints," I said. "Your base is clean. Like soap, commercial clean." "I peeled them off," she said without a full beat. I let the silence be an exam. "From the base," I said. "Not the side, not the handle. The base, all the way into the bumper seam." She heard her own line echo back and didn't like the acoustics. "I used a wipe," she said. "One of those citrus things." I nodded once toward Braun, who was busy pretending to read the ingredients on a ginger chew as if it were a legal document. "How convenient." Donovan's eyes narrowed, less in guilt than in irritation at the improvisation level she'd been handed. If she was a buyer, she'd been briefed badly. If she was a mark, she'd been selected for an ability to hold a pose. We still had minutes before Lugano. I used them to map the corridor between door B7 and door A8. The blind strip at 7 is a fact. The lurch at departure is a fact. I layered those over the facts of a collaborative theft. One hand to steady, one to switch, one to sell. Klein had a strap and a buyer's story. Braun had wipes and gloves and the arms of someone who supports weight for a living. Donovan had a case that now sang Mercer's song and wore Mercer's scars without ever having worn an airline's ghost. "Check the tour group manifests," I told Moreau, who had already called them up on his internal system. "Anyone disembark at Como?" "Two," he said. "Neither connected to our grays. They carried soft duffels that shed flour like dandelions and left the train a little whiter." "Bless them," I said. "We need the chorus to identify the solo." I brought Mercer to carriage 8 and crouched him like a coach behind the tape line we'd laid for ourselves. "Do you see anything here you recognize?" I asked, careful not to let him touch anything. He hesitated, then pointed, not at the case, not at the rack, but at the aluminum tread between vestibule and aisle. "There," he said, almost to himself. "When I rolled on at Milan, my rear left will squealed on that exact groove. It always does if I come on at an angle." I felt it in my hand. I knelt and ran a fingernail along the groove. There was a faint rub line, a shiny shim fingertip wide, the kind of polish you get from a wheel flat telling you it's proud. I photographed the tiny scar and wrote Mercer, kinesthetic recall in the margin of my pad. Memory can get facts wrong. Sensations are worse liars. The UV torch found one more thing before Lugano. A trace along Klein's cuff that had transferred to the quick of his wrist, blue dust caught in the fine hair. He tried to brush it away earlier. Under white light his cuff looked clean. Under UV his skin told on him. I took a photograph from a respectful distance. "You have a little chalk on you," I said gently. "Laundry powder," he tried again, not meeting my eye. "On your wrist," I said. He didn't answer. He studied the advertising panel above the door as if Paris were already in view and he could ride there by not blinking. We slid into Lugano on the rail equivalent of tiptoes. The platform made a bright, brief corridor of light and expectation. The station team was ready with a bomb tech and a polite perimeter. We walked Donovan's case to them like pallbearers and surrendered it for a sniff and a scan. The technician, calm, efficient, ran the checks, gave me the all clear, and placed a hold tag on the handle with the ritual practice tightness of a man who knows paper outlives memory. I kept my thumb on the case's evidence band until the tag was tied. Then I turned back to 7 to finish the sweep. Here's our stack, I told Moreau, summarizing for the tape and for our own clarity. Door B shows blue chalk flecks and a drag smear under UV, exactly where Mercer set his case. Door A shows blue motes in axle grease and flour stippling on the lower shelf. Catering reports missing service gloves and the thin pack of adhesive remover Braun hides in daylight. Klein purchased a strap 17 minutes before departure and wears chalk like a man who stood where he shouldn't. Donovan's bass is ghostless, and yet her wheels sing and her body language knew the weight. Meaning? He asked, because a conductor's job is to translate tension into announcements. Meaning Mercer's real case rode from door B to door A in the all-aboard lurch, while a partner steadied the decoy and another partner prepared a buyer, I said. The flower was a postcard from their route. The chalk is a signature they forgot to change. The Lugano chime sounded again. Doors closing, next leg beginning. We escorted Donovan's case back under watch, logged every hand, and sat her in eyeshot of 2 attendants and a plainclothes who could pass for a literature professor. I told the station team to hold the explosives clearance log for the chain. Paperwork is the spine of a moving truth. As the train took the curve out of Lugano, the lake fell away like a polished coin sliding off a table. I met Klein's eyes and Braun's reflection in the window at the same time. Their partnership wasn't romance. It was utility. He handled buyers and props. She handled weight and surfaces. Between them, Donovan acted like a person briefed at speed in a station with too many clocks. Next, I said to Moreau, we don't argue, we test. We ask only what a true owner can answer without seeing. And we listen for the lie that comes muscle memory slow. He nodded toward my bag. Borescope. In the pocket, I said. The intercom made the soft vow of the next stop. I wrote the heading for the coming page. Owner verification by Scar. Then, smaller beneath it, almost an indulgence. Stop pretending you don't hear the drum. Lugano arranges itself like a postcard even at night. The lake a black lens, the station lights pearl bright, the platform swept clean as if the city means to be believed. The express slid in with a hush that made cameras of everyone's eyes. We had our physics, our chalk and flour, our song in the wheels. Now we needed what courts like to tape to their walls. Cause, consent, seizure done properly, and an owner who can point to a scar before the bandage comes off. 2 minutes to doors, Moreau said low. His attendants flowed to their marks with the grace of people who rehearse for a living. I signaled the station unit to stand by at the head of our carriage with a bomb tech, not a battering ram. Donovan's case would get its clearance and a paper collar. Nothing more until we had either a warrant or a mouth that granted us a key. Ms. Donovan, I said, kneeling into her space so authority looked like courtesy. For the record, you decline to open your case voluntarily? I do, she said, spine straight, chin at a lawyer's angle. You said you wouldn't open bags. I said we wouldn't open without reason, I said. We now have specific, articulable facts. I counted them on gloved fingers as the train's brakes lilted into their hymn. Distinct audio will signature that matches a recording made yesterday by the courier. Tilt angle mass consistent with a 20-plus kilo load. Strap return times documenting that load. Microscars that the courier can describe in advance. And a route of transfer marked by blue chalk and bakery flour from carriage 7-door B to carriage 8-door A during boarding. These facts give me authority to seize the bag pending consent or warrant. We won't open it at this stop. We will clear it for explosives and document chain of custody. You're making a show of it, she said. Trains are theaters, I said. I prefer my shows recorded. I nodded to the attendant with the body cam. Its tiny red LED answered for both of us. The doors released with a sigh, and the platform air reached in like a hand. I kept Donovan's case tethered by my palm on the evidence band as we rolled it to the designated spot where the bomb tech waited with a sniffer that looked like an apologetic vacuum. He worked with priestly precision. Sample intake, cavity scan, swab test. Clear, he said after a minute that felt like a lane change in traffic you can't see. He affixed a yellow tag with the date, time, train number, carriage, door, and his initials. I countersigned the line that promised we hadn't opened anything. Ms. Donovan, I said, turning the case back to face her. "We're returning this to the rack under observation with an evidence band. You may sit where you can see it. If you change your mind and wish to open it for us with your combination, we can resolve ownership in 1 minute flat." "I told you," she said, cool. "I bought it used this morning from a man in a navy suit. He said he was late for a train." "Describe him," I said. She exhaled through her nose. "Tall, dark hair, clean shave, European. The suit was navy. What more do you want?" Klein flinched a small, treacherous flinch. "You can sand fingerprints, you can't sand reflex." "Thank you," I said to her, and wheeled the case back with the bomb tech trailing a clipboard of absolutions. As we re-entered the vestibule, Braun stepped sideways to allow the case past, eyes gentle, hands demure on her tote. Her performance was tidier now. Wipe packet out of sight, nausea subdued to a Leda-like pallor. Her wrists were bare. The gloves had gone elsewhere. Somewhere beneath the pantomime, her breath sat shallow and high, trained to stay small when the room got loud. I put the still of the gloved hand, thumb depressing the handle button at Como, on my phone screen and let it face the floor. The glove's logo matched catering. The still didn't need to meet her eyes. It already had. "Mr. Klein," I said. "A question." He arranged his face into a cooperative shape. "Of course. You asked earlier to switch carriages," I said. "Why?" "Too many people here," he said. "It's tense." "Crowds are great for truth," I said. "Also terrible for switches." He gave me a nothing smile. He was developing a talent for them. We parked Donovan's case with the station tag hanging like a dog's ID and looped the evidence band through the handle again. I positioned an attendant on a fold-down jump seat opposite, her phone in plain sight. The body cam got a fresh battery. Paper trails need video trails. Both need a person who remembers why they're doing this when somebody raises their voice. "Final call," I said to Donovan as the doors chimed. "Combination now. Resolve this in 60 seconds, and you make me look silly." "I'm willing to be silly." "No," she said. "I don't consent." "Then sit," I said, and the doors sealed us back into our moving question. We took the first curve north of Lugano in a slow lean. The lake winked out. I let 30 seconds go by to let silence be its own kind of pressure. Then I opened my notebook, set it on my palm, and turned to procedure. "Audio recap for record," I said, making my voice a metronome. At Milan, courier Alan Mercer placed his gray Travelmax case on carriage 7, door B rack. Within a minute of all aboard, a swap occurred. A lighter decoy took the place. The real case migrated to carriage 8, door A, evidence. Citrus solvent residue on suspect handle. Sticker ghost V-shape on suspect. Missing screw caps on suspect handle. Blue chalk flecks under UV at door B. Flower stippling and blue motes at door A. 3-beat rumble will signature matching Mercer's Milan video present on Donovan's case. Strap time and tilt angle tests consistent with mass 22 kg on Donovan's. 12 to 14 kilograms on suspect. Persons of interest. Noah Klein, 7C18. Orbiting rack with a new strap purchased 1911 at Milan. Elise Braun, 6B11. Observed with adhesive remover wipes, service gloves brand matching catering, and hot water visits. Rhea Donovan, 8 times 10 to the power of negative 22. Claiming purchase used this morning. I let the list be their mirror. Klein examined a non-existent spot on his shoe. Braun looked out of the window at a darkness that wasn't advertising itself. "Next step," I said, gentle as chalk, "is owner verification without opening." I turned to Mercer. "You're sure of your scars?" 2mm melt scar near left rear wheel, he said. A pen ink dot inside the handle well, and a driver nick on the left screw under the handle, small, but visible if you know where to look. "We'll verify on the move," I said. "At speed if necessary. The tools don't mind." "Why not ask her to open it again?" Klein said, inserting reason like a hobby. She said no. "But if she's really innocent?" "You're advocating for her," I said. "I'm advocating for everyone to relax," he said. "You bought a strap 17 minutes before boarding," I said. "People relax differently." I signaled the junior attendant. Bring me the borescope. He placed the slim, coiled snake into my hand, battery full, LED bright. I crouched at Donovan's case without touching the lock, slid the scope into the handle drain hole, and let the little camera bloom its light into the plastic cave. On the screen, the curve of the well lint the molded grid beneath, and there, like a dot forgotten by a proofreader, the ink spot. I tapped capture. The image ticked into memory with a timestamp and GPS beside me. Mercer's breath found the tempo of endurance. Next, I said, and shifted to the base. A folding mirror slid under the left rear corner. The vestibule light glanced off it like a heliograph. Even without UV, the melt scar shone a tiny oval where plastic had remembered heat. Another still. Another timestamp. I moved to the screw beneath the handle and tilted the case half an inch to let light kiss the crosshead. Under paint, a minuscule driver nick, the little laceration that comes when you tighten something at the wrong angle after a long day. Capture. Donovan watched each still freeze to my screen with an actress's discipline. Her hands didn't twitch. Her jaw set. What moved was calculation. You could see her counting how many different versions of this story she could carry into tomorrow without dropping one. I bought it used, she said again, staking her claim to the only island left. From a man in a navy suit, I said. Yes, she said. I looked at Klein. He didn't look back. That was fine. The people who won't meet your eyes are easy. It's the ones who can look right through you that take years off your life. Marco, I radioed to the catering car. Confirm glove stock again. 2 pairs still missing, he said, tired of hearing himself say it. And the adhesive remover pack? Light by 1, he said. Copy. I slid the borescope back to the attendant, sealed the captures, and wrote 3 words on my page. We are there. Mr. Klein, I said without turning. You have the air of a middleman. It's not a judgment. It's a contour. This used case story. Did it start as your idea? Or did someone sell you the plot along with a strap? He swallowed. I don't know what you... Don't finish that sentence, I said mildly. It never ends well on microphones. Silence took a seat between us and ordered coffee. The intercom gave us Bellinzona in 23 minutes. The timetable would push us into Basel SBB with a 3-minute window, the exact kind of stop a pickup likes. Long enough to reach, short enough to deny. I pictured a buyer who didn't mind carrying a GPS if we gave him one. A hand that would hover over a handle and never quite land until it committed a crime on camera. Here's what happens next, I said, so everyone in the vestibule could pretend they weren't hearing it. We keep Donovan's case under band and watch. We keep the suspect decoy where it sits, looking obliging. We put a twin decoy with a GPS tag where a buyer will expect the real thing. At Basel, the hand that reaches will take a picture of itself on our lenses. If it belongs to a Victor Lang or a broker by any other name, I'm pleased to be surprised. Klein stopped breathing for half a beat at the word broker. He didn't know that yet. His phone did. Station unit, I said into the radio. Stand by to receive a declaration of seizure, Donovan's case. Pending warrant. We have owner verification by non-invasive identifiers. We will not open until Zurich unless consent changes. Copy, came the answer from the other world that waits at every platform. I turned back to Donovan. You can end this in 60 seconds, I said quietly. You dial your combination, you open, we find the seal and ledger, we close it back up. We write you a letter you will fold into your wallet and display like a medal. If the contents are not his, I will apologize in front of these people in both of my languages. She stared at the lock as if it were an eye that might blink. No, she said, not without a lawyer. Fair, I said. Lawyers are trains too. We'll meet yours in Zurich. We settled into the rhythm that comes after a crescendo. The drawn breath, the held note. Braun adjusted her tote so the bulge faced inboard and pretended to sleep with the intentness of a person rehearsing. Klein held still until stillness became work. Mercer sat where he could see the band on his life's work and practiced not moving a muscle. When I finally looked down at my page again, I'd written a single sentence without realizing I was writing. The case is found. Motive is next. I underlined motive and drew a small box around it the way I do when the train is about to enter a tunnel and I don't want my pen to slide. Next part, I said to Moreau. We show them why anyone would risk a swap on a moving train. And to myself, in a voice the recorder still heard, then we set the trap at Basel. When trains teach you something twice, believe it. We had the song in the wheels and ink where ink should not be unless you knew to look. We had a melt scar small enough to be shy and a driver nick that belonged to the history of a single hand. Courts like owners who can call their scars and crooks who can't. Record this as positive owner verification, I said to the body cam. Ink dot within handle well, melt scar left rear will mount, driver nick beneath handle. All match to owner's advanced description. Case remains sealed. Band intact. Station tag affixed at Lugano. No opening to date. Moreau wrote as I spoke, the habit of a conductor who'd learned to make a transcript before anyone asked for one. Donovan watched the notes land like hail on a tin roof. She said nothing. Good liars know when to retreat into silence and let process bruise itself. I straightened from the borescope and caught Klein on the edge of my frame. His eyes not on the case but on the aisle, counting gaps, weighing doors, imagining carriage 6 like a country with more forgiving laws. He had the look thieves get when they realize the plan is not a plan anymore but a costume they can't remove. Mr. Klein, I said without heat. Stay seated. He smiled and tried to reduce the command to a social misunderstanding. Of course, he said and rose. Moreau sidestepped into the aisle, a small man who could become a wall when the timetable required. Sir, he said, the word shaped like velvet. Not now. Klein chose now. He slipped left, around a couple standing to stretch, and threaded toward the junction with carriage 6. The junior attendant moved to intercept, but Klein had trained on crowded platforms and narrow halls. He knew how to borrow the momentum of people and turn it into cover. He reached the concertina between cars, pushed through the swing door, and met another door that did not agree. 2 conductors waited on the other side because I teach trains to be ready. They held the door by its safety bar with one hand each, polite as librarians with a book someone tried to steal. Sir, one said, please return to your seat. Klein pivoted back into 7, a smile like cellophane. Just stretching my legs, he said for the benefit of anyone who needed a story. I stepped into the vestibule, squared enough space for a conversation to happen without elbows voting. Here, I said, where we can talk without choreography. Am I under arrest? He asked. The phrase came too early. Innocent people don't need it yet. You're detained in a moving investigation, I said. We'll discuss formal arrest where the ground doesn't move. He looked past me to Braun, who gave the smallest head shake I've ever seen. A whisper of a no. The theater continued. She touched her stomach as if nausea were a toggle and she could flip it on by will. Back to scars, I said, giving process something to do while fear spent itself. I knelt by the suspect case, the decoy, threaded the borescope into its handle well. Clean. No ink. I slid the mirror under its base. No melt scar. The plastic skin was unbroken. The driver nicks were wrong. Both screws showed tool marks like a clumsy maintenance, not the single Nick Mercer had remembered. I said the words for the camera and the record and Klein's ears. The decoy is new to us and new to itself, I concluded. It's performed well. It hasn't lived. A voice carried from behind me. Donovan, detective, I want a lawyer in Zurich. Until then, I won't say another word. That's not a bad plan, I said without turning. It will make our paperwork tidier. I asked Moreau for a folding table and a clean cloth. He produced both the way good conductors produce miracles, matter-of-factly. We set the table midway down the aisle where everyone could see without needing to pretend they weren't looking. Transparency is a tonic. It keeps rumor hydrated with facts. Owner verification drill, I announced, plain. No openings, no passwords. 3 items. Ink, scar, nick. 1 courier calls them blind. 1 case answers. Then we put your hands in your laps and breathe. I had Mercer step to my left, eyes on me, not the case. Where's your ink? I asked. He gestured in air. not toward the bag. Inside the handle well, he said, right of center, about 2 centimeters above the drain hole, slightly toward the front. I slid the borescope in and froze the frame where he'd painted with words. I rotated the image to match his imaginary map and let the attendants see. No one else spoke. I didn't give them the chance. The melt scar. Base left rear, just outboard of the wheel housing, he said. It's small and glossy. I caught it on a cafe heater in Sofia last winter. Mirror shine scar. The junior attendant nodded like a man seeing a constellation he'd only seen in books. The driver nick? Left screw beneath the handle, Mercer said. Tiny. Across one arm of the cross. LED angle nick. I zoomed until the pixels got thick enough to taste. The line was there, a shallow laceration so specific it felt indecent to name it. Positive, I said, and closed the drill. The car breathed out. People like closure even when it's only procedural. Klein exhaled with them, as if he could cash out of the moment by blending with the audience. Then his hand moved toward his backpack. A twitch caught itself, stopped. There are worse tells than a hand that misses an old habit. Mr. Klein, I said, I don't care for the strap story. You acquired it 1911 at Milan from a stall that sells ownership theater. You orbited this rack with that theater in your hand. You have blue chalk in your cuff hair and now on your wrist. A woman next to you carries wipes and handles weight like glassware. A third party holds a case that knows a courier's scars. Tell me which part of this you think is improv. He opened his mouth and closed it. Braun dropped her lashes to their waiting position and did not look up again. Moreau, I said, please relocate Mr. Klein to a neutral space with a seat and a camera. The carriage 6 galley, he said. We can spare a jump seat and an attendant. Klein tried the smile, the switch, the what-ifs, the European charm that staggers unpaid bar tabs back into balance. It didn't land. 2 attendants stepped into place, not touching him, not needing to. He moved because the choreography left him no steps he could dance. The door to 6 accepted him. The conductors escorted him past the coffee machines and the stacks of paper cups and seated him on a fold down with his knees almost touching a stainless panel that reflected his face back a second slower than it moved. The camera watched. A bottle of water, the prisoner's chalice, appeared within reach. I stayed in 7. Donovan remained in 8, quiet as a school picture. Braun faded into the posture of a woman inventing sleep. Head tilted, mouth soft, hands folded on an empty tote. My phone buzzed with a CCTV still from Milan platform. Klein in a navy suit with no tie, speaking to a woman in a camel coat I could now name as Elise Braun by the angle of her jaw. In the still, they're staged next to a luggage rack while passengers perform their own dramas around them. Tourists sorting seats, a couple arguing across a suitcase, a porter pretending not to hear. His hand is on a handle. Her hand is on the crossbar. The suspect is not suspect in that frame because it hasn't learned to be yet. Archive that, I told the operator. Tag it swap engine. Back at the rack, I ran process like rosary. Evidence banned on Donovan's case? Checked. Station tag secure? Checked. Body cam time synced with carriage system? Checked. The suspect case sat where it had been taught to sit. Blank, obedient, smelling faintly of citrus that faded by the minute. I took one more swab of its handle because redundancy is the god of trains. Moreau returned from 6 with his conductor face set to steady. Klein is seated, he said. He asked for a lawyer. Good for him, I said. He can have several at Basel if he likes. Basel? He echoed. We'll do it at Basel, not here, I said. 3 minutes. A twin decoy with a tag. A buyer who believes in windows. I glanced at Mercer and gave him the courtesy of a plan stated out loud. We'll put a GPS in a twin and leave it where a hand like Klein's would have told a friend to look. The real case stays with you and a plainclothes. The decoy goes to the rack with a smile. Mercer nodded. He looked older than he had in Milan's hotel photo and younger than he would by Zurich. I made a pass through 8. Ms. Donovan, I said, I know what you're going to say in Zurich. You're going to say you were a buyer, not a thief. You were lied to. You were told the case was used, cheap, a bargain, and you love a bargain. Maybe you were to sell it back at the next stop. Maybe you were to hold it for a man in a tan coat. That's a story. It's better than the other one. It will still need a lawyer. She held my gaze the way people hold a plank in a swimming pool. Her jaw unclenched once and reset. I'm waiting for my stop, she said. So are we, I said. The intercom gave us another little pledge about schedules and scenery. In the window's black pane, bronze reflection aligned with mine for a heartbeat. In it, she looked like a woman who had spent years not spilling. Not soup, not secrets. There's a craft to that. The craft fails when the weight isn't yours. I set my watch face to Basel SBB. 3 stops on. Sting time penciled under the glass of minutes. Then I wrote a heading for the next page because labels keep men honest. Part 9, the swap engine. Under it, I put 3 names and 3 verbs. Braun steadies. Klein sells. Donovan holds. When the pen lifted, the train hummed an agreement I chose to hear as inevitable. Trains don't have secrets. They have choreography. Once you accept that, reconstruction becomes a matter of counting beats. I set up my little war room on the flip-down table at door B. Pad, phone, the junior attendant's clipboard, and Moro's logbook. Then I asked the CCTV operator for a clock-straight timeline from Milan platform to Como departure, with every camera that had bothered to watch us. Play Milan, track 9, I said. Half speed. The screen on my phone bloomed into the grainy gentleness of station footage. 1923. Passengers eddied around the door rack like leaves bumping a curb. A man in a navy suit entered frame. Klein with his tie in his pocket and his smile in reserve. With him, a woman in a camel coat, Braun, who looked like the kind of person you'd ask for directions and then thank more than once. They didn't look at one another in a way that would read as conspiracy. That's the first craft, separate while close. He approached the rack with a case that matched 1,000 other sins. She hovered where she could plausibly be a person waiting for a friend. Zoom on hands, I said. The operator punched in. Klein's right hand took the upper shelf with the confidence of a regular. His left hand placed a gray travel max on the lower shelf, the way a careful man sets down a sleeping child. 2 seconds later, Mercer entered from frame left, checked his ticket with the distracted intimacy of someone who's done this too many times, and parked his gray on the lower shelf, inboard of the pillar. The moment felt like a softness. It was an invitation. Freeze, I said. I put a fingertip on the screen, the way we all touch our screens when what we want is to push time itself. There's your blind strip, Moro, I said. The pillar, the occlusion line, that's where someone practiced. Roll, I said. The all-aboard chime sounded. The platform went from patience to purpose. Klein's shoulder angled just so. Braun executed a perfect helpful lift. She reached, not for her own case, but for the crossbar as if offering steadiness to anyone nearby. That's the second craft. Help before you harm. In the same beat, Klein slid a lighter decoy onto the door lower shelf, almost exactly where Mercer's had been, and ghosted Mercer's real case toward the aisle as if he were making room. Bronze gloved fingers. I could now see the black liner tag at her wrist in 2 frames. Pinched Mercer's handle button down, relieving the spring tension so the case would slide and not hop. She had rehearsed this in kitchens, in restaurants, in the narrow spaces where glass and gravity bargain. Stop, I said. There, the glove. That's your Como still in practice at Milan. The next movement was geographic, not theatrical. Klein rolled Mercer's case forward 1 carriage to door A in carriage 8, parked it on the lower shelf beneath where the culinary tour had staged earlier, the shelf that now wore flour like baby's breath, and left it there. He brought his own decoy back to carriage 7, door B, gave it the demeanor of something that had always belonged, and let the train teach it how to be furniture. Timestamps, I said. The operator read them out. We married them to Moreau's log. Doors shut at 1928. Depart at 29. Swap sequence completed in under 30 seconds. That's the third craft. Speed where you can hide it inside other speed. Klein didn't leave a vacuum. He walked the platform along the carriage windows until he found Donovan. flipping a magazine and wearing a jacket that said she liked the way linen forgives travel's heat. From another camera, we watched him pitch. Body angled just off square, hands modestly visible, the tempo of a man who sells clean things fast. Audio? I asked. Too far, the operator said. We can lip read if you like. I prefer text, I said, and gestured to the junior attendant, who had Klein's phone dump on a separate feed. We scrolled the thread through the pre-boarding hour. A contact saved as broker, on train. Gray Max court stuff inside. Then, buyer at track. Then nothing. Klein had the modern crook's belief that if a thing wasn't typed, it couldn't incriminate him. He had, however, arranged the buyer in advance and then made the sale in the human way. In person, with the real case in his hand and a lie that was easier to believe than the truth. Roll Como, I said. We watched Braun at the shop kiosk, buying adhesive remover wipes with the resigned efficiency of someone who had just learned what sticker ghosts are. She returned to the train, kept stationary at the rack, and scrubbed what the platform cameras had already promised to keep in its glue's memory. She missed what glue couldn't hold. Blue chalk embedded in the texture of a crossbar. Flour lodged in wool grease. You don't outsmart residue, I said to the room. You outweight it. Or you earn it and then change your clothes. We played the last sequence back-to-back. Mercer's report to Moreau, my rack freeze, attendants deploying like a safety net woven in real time. That was the point where their plan collapsed. The choreography called for a simple flip. Klein sells high in Milan, buys back low at the next stop after the courier's boring train rolls on. The courier had made them a problem by reporting immediately. My freeze had turned a moving corridor into a glass box. Write it, I told myself where the body cam could hear it. Swap engine, staged helpful lift, blind strip exploit, steady and slide. Route the real one forward, one carriage, park it under flour. Decoy back to original rack. Buyer hooked on platform. Wipes used at first stop to cleanse visible guilt. Plan interrupted by report and freeze. I put 3 names under rolls. Braun, steadies, and scrubs. Klein lifts, routes, sells. Donovan holds and denies. The why still waited in the dark. Cash is a sloppy motive. It makes thieves stupid and juries bored. This theft had a cleaner vector. I laid the words out like a row of instruments on a tray. Evidence pouch, Zurich, ledger, flash drive, ink that drowns careers. Back to your phone, I told the junior attendant, who had already read my mind. Look at Kleinbroker post-boarding. We scrolled to the first message after departure. On train. Gray Max court stuff inside. Then, payment released on pickup, Basel. A pin pinged on my screen. A cell tower near Basel SBB. A 3-minute stop, a concourse notorious for its clean lines of sight. And a buyer in a tan overcoat who could draft behind commuters without showing his face to anyone who wasn't already looking. That's our transfer, I said. The case was never meant to ride into Zurich with a courier in daylight. It was meant to step off at Basel with a man whose pockets smell like cash and metal. Moreau, who had seen a lifetime's worth of human reasons between Milan and Paris, took the pen from me and underlined the word Basel twice. We have 3 minutes, he said. 3 is mercy, I said. 3 is a trap. I closed the Milan sequence and returned to the present. Donovan sat with professional stillness. You learn to wait if you buy big things from strangers. Braun had the expression of someone who had almost finished a job before a door locked behind her. Klein glowed off stage in the carriage 6 galley like a virtue unadvertised and returned. The camera above him recorded a stillness that had gone from performance to decision fatigue. Last question for this part, I said aloud, writing as I spoke. Why Mercer? You don't run a 3-person lift and sell with gloves and wipes and choreography for loose jewelry. You do it for paper that outlives hard drives, for numbers that name people, for ink that makes careers drown in public. I flipped to a fresh page and wrote the part's title with the confidence I give my pen when a thing is ready to tell itself. Part 10, What Was Really for Sale. After that, I told Moreau, we put a twin with a GPS at door A and 8. We leave the decoy in 7, and we walk into Basel like a camera with shoes. He nodded, conductor steady. And if the buyer doesn't show, he'll show, I said. glancing at the pin near Basel SBB again. Men don't wire $25,000 to a broker unless they've been promised more than a suitcase. Across the aisle, Mercer watched the evidence band around his life like you watch a sleeping child's breath. I closed the notebook with a soft tap and rehearsed the next beat out loud so even the guilty could keep time. Next stop, I said. We find out whether the man in the tan overcoat likes to leave fingerprints, or whether a thin line of UV grease on a handle button will do the talking for him. Money moves like freight, containerized, labeled, and disguised as something it can explain if someone asks too many questions. The thing in Mercer's case wasn't money. It was the part of money that can't stand to be named. I set the flip-down table in door B to bureaucrat mode, pad centered, pen squared, phone feeding its own light, and asked the junior attendant to open the logical boxes we'd collected from the last hour. Klein's phone dump, bronze banking, Donovan's alibi, Mercer's pouch description. Start with the pouch, I said. We can work outward. Mercer, who had practiced describing without saying more than a court clerk would need, kept his voice even. A sealed evidence pouch, tamper strip intact. Contents: 1 encrypted flash drive, 1 forensic ledger printed on water-stable stock, and a bottle of archival ink used for signature verification. The pouch is logged to Zurich Cantonal Court, assigned to a docket involving a logistics conglomerate and alleged shell accounts. Name of the conglomerate? I asked. He looked at the ceiling, the reflex of a man under NDA. I can't say it on a train. You don't have to. Its fronts will speak, I said. Open Braun. The junior attendant already had the banking app screenshots queued from a production order that would survive any judge's glare. We scrolled to yesterday. A wire transfer. Astra Consulting. Memo line retainer. Amount €6,000. The sending entity's registration traced back, not to an office with a door, but to a service corporation whose board was a map of mail drops. Astra Consulting, I said aloud, letting the body cam write it for later. A name that's never had dirt under its fingernails. What do they consult on, besides retainers that arrive the day before a theft? Under the transfer, a note, Como. Under that, BS Basel. As if someone had summarized our route in a hurry and sent money in the same tone of voice. Cross-check Klein, I said. The message thread with broker was sparse, but not sterile. On train, gray Max Court stuff inside. The reply, Basel pickup, 3 minutes, do not miss. A second number, unknown prepaid, had sent a short list the night before. Mercer, track 9, door B, courier badge color green. That detail, badge color, wasn't public. It belonged to people who sit in back offices and turn information into leverage. Whoever broker is, he's not freelancing, I said. He's vertical. He has access to manifest gossip and security color codes. He wants the pouch because it's not just a story. It's proof. Proof travels better than rumor. From the back of the carriage, a pair of students laughed at something on a phone. For a second, the train sounded like any other. Then the sound receded into the aisle like a tide that had instructions not to interfere. I turned to Donovan. Your alibi, I said. You say you bought a case used this morning from a man in a navy suit at Milan Central. She nodded. Her jaw had settled into its decision. Do you have a receipt? No. Did he give you a name? No. Why buy a case that size just before a trip when you already had one? She gave the smile people wear when they're certain they have the right to be foolish. It was a bargain. He looked respectable. Everything looks respectable on a platform, I said, until doors close. I let the procedural part of me put the next words on the record. At this time, Rhea Donovan appears uninvolved beyond the purchase of what she represents as a second-hand bag. She will be refunded if and when the bag is returned to its owner. Pending warrant, she remains detained only to preserve chain of custody. Donovan didn't soften. You don't relax when you've just watched your evening change species. Back to motive, I said to the room and to the microphone. The ledger doesn't just accuse, it arrests. That's why you hire a broker and a pair and you take risks you can't pay for with cash. The flash drive encrypts the ledger's twins. The ink protects signatures from last-minute revisionist miracles. The pouch is a fuse. Somebody in a tower who owns warehouses and trucks and fronts is praying we pull it. Moreau, who had seen trains carry olives and soldiers in grief, looked down at his logbook as if timetables could translate money into something less predatory. "And if the fuse doesn't arrive?" he asked. "Then someone buys time," I said. "Time to restructure. Time to lean on witnesses. Time to make transfers vanish into ports that make questions drown." The junior attendant coughed a reminder. Polite, precise. "Detective," he said. "Basel SBB TA 45. "Good," I said. "We've got an hour to make the train look predictable." I called up Basil's platform schematic and traced the route from carriage 8, door A, our flower rack, to the nearest exit a man in a tan overcoat could reach without turning his back to too many lenses. 2 cameras covered the door of vestibule. A third watched the concourse shoulder where commuters shear toward the escalators. The buyer didn't have to be clever. He only had to be on time. "Plan," I said. "We build a twin, same Travelmax shell, same weight profile. We band it, but we add GPS inside the handle shaft and under the base bumper. 2 tags. Redundant. We fill it with nothing but weight and paper that looks like paper. We put it visible at carriage 8 door A under an attendant's eyes, ordinary enough to be invisible. The real case rides with Mercer and a plainclothes to Zurich. At Basel, the hand that reaches becomes a thumb with UV grease on it. We document contact before we ever use a word like arrest." Moreau's mouth twitched. "You like grease," he said. "Juries do," I said. "They like pictures." A printout of a thumb shining where it shouldn't makes a better bedtime story than he looked guilty. I had the junior attendant unbox our spare Travelmax. We worked the shell like stagehands, scuffing a wheel just enough to make a humble noise, dulling a zipper pull with a little hand oil, adding a faint V-shaped sticker ghost with adhesive and removal so a buyer's eye would feel at home. We nested 2 GPS slugs, one in the telescopic shaft cavity, one epoxy fixed inside the base behind the bumper. The readouts pinged my phone with the tiny arrogance of things that know their coordinates. "Wait," I said. We filled it to 22 kilos with slug weights we keep for this ritual. We rolled it across the ribbed aluminum threshold until it found a song between nondescript and confident. The junior attendant timed the strap. 1.68 seconds. It made the right swallow. "And UV?" Moreau asked. I held up a little dauber of clear grease that blooms under ultraviolet like guilt at confession. I pressed it to the handle button until the tiny dome of it sat like a tear. "Invisible now, loud later." "Klein?" I said into the radio. "Status?" From carriage 6 galley came the reply from an attendant with a voice like tea. "Seated. Wants a lawyer. Stares at nothing. Phone is in our custody. Logged." "Good," I said. "Let him stare. Let him calculate the price of telling the broker he failed." "Braun?" I asked. "Sleeping," the junior attendant said, meaning performing sleep with a grip on her tote that would impress a rock climber. "Wake her with kindness at Basel," I said. "Offer to help her with her baggage." I looked at the adhesive wipes half visible in her tote and added, "Offer her nothing she can use." I walked the aisle to Donovan and did the decent thing. "Ms. Donovan," I said, keeping my voice one notch above private, "based on the owner verification and our tests, I'm refunding you €250 now as a receipt for your cooperation and as a record that you are not being penalized for a purchase you may have made in good faith. You will sign a temporary transfer acknowledging that the case is seized pending warrant and that the funds are a hold harmless until ownership is adjudicated." Her eyes flicked to the money, then to the band on the handle. She took the pen. "I want my name nowhere near this," she said as she signed. "That's the best place for it," I said. "Nowhere near." The train took a curve that felt like a thought changing its mind. Mercer sat with the real case at his ankle, a plainclothes opposite him reading a paperback that hid a radio. He looked at me the way people look at parachutes, grateful, suspicious, resigned to physics. "Here's the why in a sentence," I said, because sentences help. "A conglomerate with shells for bones hired a broker to make your pouch late. Late would be as good as lost for their next hearing. Late buys them months. Months buys them cover. You can forgive everything with time if no one keeps a calendar. And you? He asked. What do you get? Timetables, I said. They're the one religion trains and detectives share. He almost smiled. Almost. The junior attendant brought the twin, our GPS decoy, and I set it in carriage 8, door A. The platform schematic in my head turned transparent, the way models do in museums. I placed Moreau's people where the sightlines braid. One at the vestibule, one at the escalator shoulder, one near the clock that men in tan coats like to consult when they pretend they're late for nothing in particular. I opened my notebook to a fresh page and wrote the last words this part needed to earn its keep. Basel SBB 3 minutes. Decoy in place. UV on the button. GPS hot. Real case with courier. Buyer to learn what a handle feels like when it betrays you. Then I put the pen down because you don't beg a plan to work by over-explaining it. You just arrive on time and let the choreography hold. Basel SBB sits in the timetable like a comma that can end a sentence if you don't watch it. The express would give us 3 minutes, a courtesy for commuters and a temptation for thieves. We had our twin in carriage 8, door A, UV grease on the button, GPS ticking a heartbeat through my phone. The real case stayed with Mercer and a plainclothes 2 cars back, where the view was good and the angle better. Positions, I said. Moreau's attendants turned into geography. One across from door A, phone held low. One by the escalator shoulder where the crowd thins. One under the station clock that men check when they want to look like they belong to a schedule. I slid into the vestibule shadow, half behind the pillar that had started this dance. The intercom took a breath and promised Basel in 2 minutes. The cabin air changed the way water changes just before a boil. Braun woke from her curated sleep with a decorous yawn and smoothed her tote as if ironed. Donovan crossed one leg over the other and watched the band on her case like it might confess unfaithfulness. Klein glowed offstage in carriage 6 galley, a man who had come to the end of the hallway where all the doors are mirrors. Remember, I said to the team, emphasizing the kindness at the heart of force, we don't grab the hand, we photograph it, we take the thumb. The rest comes after. The brakes sang. The platform slid into existence. Clean lines, a long pane of glass, commuters tuned to the same minute. The doors unsealed with a hush, and for a heartbeat, the vestibule was a lens. He arrived exactly as text messages say men do. Tan overcoat, scarf field gray, shoes that wanted to be ignored. Victor Lang, the name would come later, moved with the unfussy economy of a person who had found things on platforms before and never been asked to explain himself. He didn't hesitate. Hesitation buys witnesses. He aimed straight for door A, looked once at the clock and once at the case, and stepped into the vestibule as if the space had been drawn around him. Hands tell stories before faces do. His left stayed in his pocket. His right floated up in a straight, businesslike line, index finger extended, thumb poised above the handle button. You could imagine him pressing the elevator on his floor, tapping enter on a spreadsheet, signing a receipt and not keeping it. The movement was unadorned and confident and so clean the camera loved it. Hold, I whispered, more to myself than to anyone, and felt the vestibule contract to the size of his thumb. He pressed. Under regular light, nothing happened except gravity agreeing to work. Under UV, the clear grease I had dabbed blossomed into a soft, guilty flare across the pad of his thumb and the crescent of the handle. My attendant's camera caught the exact frame. Thumb depressed, glow alive. A second angle from the escalator shoulder doubled it. The third from under the clock sealed it with a witness that didn't know our names. Now, I said and stepped in. Sir, I said at human volume, to give him the dignity of being addressed before he lost it. He looked down at me like a man asked a question in a language he didn't admit he spoke. Up close, he smelled like wool and cold and envelope. Yes, he said. You're touching evidence, I said. Remove your hand and stay where you are. He did that little half-withdrawal trained people do when every part of their brain wants to finish the motion but a small competent piece says don't. The UV smear lengthened on the button, the thumb glowing as if it had swallowed a secret. He didn't see the light, he saw my badge. What is this? He said. Calm was his instrument. A photograph, I said. Moreau slid behind him with that conductor's miracle of being everywhere, and the vestibule gently narrowed. Lang clocked the angles and found there were fewer than he liked. "I am in a hurry," he said. "You're on time," I said. "That's different." He breathed once, a thin winter breath, and chose a personality. "You are making a mistake," he said, in a tone that had corrected waiters and subordinates for years. "Perhaps," I said, and nodded to the attendant. The phone hummed. The UV image dotted to stills. "But it's one that glows." The 3 minutes were already trying to end. Commuters flowed past us in a braid that refused to tangle. Braun rose with her tote, auditioned a line. "Do you need?" and put it away when I put up a hand. She had the sense to let this be someone else's scene. Donovan studied the case in front of her with an almost academic interest, as if she could grade it for honesty. In carriage 6, the camera watched Klein turn his head to the left and then to the right and then fix his eyes on nothing. "Sir," I said to Lang, "you're detained. You have the right to remain quiet. Since we are still on a train, silence is the part of your rights that travels well." He worked his mouth like a man tasting a word he hadn't ordered. "On what basis?" I kept it blessedly simple. "You reached for a bag belonging to another passenger. We have video from 3 angles of your thumb on the button with forensic marking transferred. We have communications arranging a pickup at this stop. We have cash bulging your inside pocket where men keep big decisions. And we have a train that leaves in 20 seconds. Walk with us, please." He made a small signal to an empty idea, as if a better future might rise out of the platform tiles and save him. None did. We walked him to the platform detail where the station officers took custody with the professional grace that keeps platforms from becoming theater. They patted his coat with courtesy and removed a thick, sealed envelope of 25,000 euros. His phone, warm from a recent text, slid into a property bag with a sound that always moves paperwork forward. "Name?" I asked. He considered. "Victor Lang," he said, choosing the truth because everything else was already busy. "We'll speak again," I said. "Not on a platform." He touched the knot of his scarf with the hand that didn't glow. Men always have a hand that didn't glow. We had 15 seconds to be 2 places at once. "Moreau," I said, "escort our guest to the station office. I'll be in Zurich before the coffee cools." He nodded and did a conductor's miracle twice in a row. Sent a man to earth and a train to time. I turned back to door A. The decoy sat exactly where we'd left it, its UV secret already in the stills. My phone showed 2 green dots, both GPS tags content to be boring. I touched the case as if it were just luggage and relocked the handle to wipe away any narrative that didn't serve me. Basel tightened its jaw and then let us go. The doors sighed. We took the rail like a knife takes a groove it has made for itself. On the move again, I walked the corridor that had been a plan and was now evidence. Donovan raised her eyes. "Was he your man?" she asked, trying on the public's plural when it wants to sound helpful. "He was a man," I said. "Sometimes that's the same thing." "Am I free to go at Zurich?" she asked. "If what's in your case belongs to Mr. Mercer, then you won't be going very far," I said. "You'll be refunded and released with an apology large enough to read from across a room. And if it isn't," she said, "then I'll apologize to you sooner," I said. Her mouth softened against its wishes. People like being told the apology will be legible. I went forward to carriage 6. Klein sat on the jump seat like a man who had learned about waiting too late in life. The stainless panel opposite him offered his reflection the mercy of a small delay. "News," I said. "Your Basel friend's name is Victor Lang. He glows under UV." Klein didn't move. Silence weighed more than his strap. "Here's the part where people decide," I said. "You can carry this alone until Zurich and add charges to your jacket like soup stains. Or you can tell me the thing broker never told you why." He swallowed. "You know why. Say it," I said. "Men who say why in time sometimes get time back." He closed his eyes. When he opened them, they didn't perform. "The ledger," he said. "They don't want it to make court. They said if it was late, the judge would throw the hearing. They said it wasn't even stealing, just delaying truth. That's the same thing, I said, because someone had to. I got 2,000 and a promise, he said. Braun got 6 direct. They told us there'd be a buyback, that if it went wrong, we could sell the case to some tourist and be unlucky. They were going to use a tan coat. They always use a coat. It makes people remember less. Broker, I said. I never met him, Klein said. Text only. Changed numbers. If I'm lucky, he's a tower and I have nothing to give you. If you're lucky, I said, and let him hear the word turn on itself. Back in 7, Braun sat with her hands folded, wrists bare. The woman who never spills, having finally found a weight she couldn't disguise as grace. Elise, I said. Names are sometimes little knives that loosen lids. Lang is in custody. Klein is talking. She looked up without flinching. It was a job, she said. You've never done a job that asked you to do something you'd rather not? Every day, I said. But I don't pick up handles I didn't pay for. Her mouth crooked. The truth had loosened her posture by a millimeter. I steady things, she said. That's what I do. You steadied a theft, I said. I steadied a plan, she said. He stole it. We let the sentence sit between us like a glass neither of us wanted to empty. The train slid through a pocket of dark that felt like forgetting. When the light returned, it did so with the modesty of a good alibi. Zurich in under an hour, Morrow said, reappearing with the conductor's gift for news. Lang is with station police. They have your stills. They have his cash. Good, I said. Then we let the next part be paperwork. I radioed ahead. Zurich Cantonal Court detail. Be at platform with a custody team and seal log. We would deliver a case that had learned too many names, with its numbers intact and its ink unspilled. I sat across from Mercer and let the train carry my voice so I wouldn't have to. You'll walk this into Zurich with weigh-in, photo, seal numbers matched to your departure. Then they'll take your fear and file it. He nodded, the kind of nod people give when they've been rehearsing for hours to look like relief and finally get to play the part. Last leg, I wrote at the top of my page. Final part, the unclaimed handle, closing part. Under it, band, seal, thank you, method memo, empty rack. The express held steady on its ribbon of speed. Hands had done all the talking they could at Basel. The rest would be signatures. The rest would be ink. Zurich gathers trains the way a harbor gathers weather, quietly, with intention. The express bled speed into the rails. The city rose from its own order. I stood at door B with the case that had learned too many names and watched the platform compose itself. Court officers in gray, station police in navy, a clerk holding a clipboard the way a priest holds a book. Arrival in 1 minute, Morrow said, and the sentence felt like a key turning. Procedure is a staircase. We took it 1 step at a time. Step 1, weigh in. The court scale waited on a collapsible cart with its display zeroed and its corners taped. We rolled the case onto the plate. The numbers climbed and settled. 22.1 kilograms. The clerk called it out. The officer mirrored it into the log. Step 2, photo. 4 sides, base, handle, evidence band close-up. The Lugano explosive clearance tag with initials squared and legible. Step 3, seals. The clerk read the pouch seal ID from Mercer's intake sheet. I read the same ID from Milan's departure copy. The camera caught the pair of numbers sitting in the same world. Courier Mercer, the lead officer said. You will witness transfer. Mercer stepped forward with the restrained relief of a man exiting a burning room through a door labeled only exit. He placed a hand, gloved, on the case's shell and nodded when the log took his name. His other hand shook once, a small, unrepeatable tremor that did not embarrass him. Detective Brooks, the clerk said, pen ready. Method memo promised. I passed him the top sheet of the stack I'd been writing since Milan. Audio will signature. Rackstrap return timing. Tilt angle caster brake. UV residue mapping. Chalk and adhesive. Bore scope verification. Inked it and handle well. Microscar confirmation. Melt scar. Driver nick. UV mark entrapment on handle button. GPS decoy deployment. In that order, with timestamps and page references. The memo wasn't literature. It was a map of how we made a moving corridor behave like a lab without scaring the patient. Suspects? The station captain asked. Noah Klein detained in transit. Elise Braun detained. Victor Lang in Basel custody, I said. Charges recommended. Theft, interference with judicial process, receiving stolen property. A fourth actor labeled broker coordinated timing and payment. Device analysis in progress. I didn't add motives. Their lawyers would embroider those when they needed to. Understood, the captain said. We signed me, the clerk, the lead officer, Mercer. Ink crossed paper in straight lines. The case crossed a small distance from my palm to an officer's. I felt the loss like a door closing on a room I'd arranged carefully and had to leave as I found it. Moreau stood a respectful pace back, conductor face in place. Detective, he said. My log. He offered his little book, and I skimmed the last entries. Rack freezes issued, photo before move protocol, staff positions at Como, Lugano, Basel. Names of attendants who'd turned presents into locks. I initialed the page and handed it back. Thank you, I said. You made my train behave, he said. It likes to be believed. Klein came off the express under two officers' light hands, pale and small under a jacket that had been chosen for a different evening. He looked at Mercer in the way men look at the people they owe apologies to and can't yet afford them. Braun followed, tote folded flat now, wrists quiet, a woman who had run out of excuses and found acceptance more comfortable than she expected. Neither spoke. In the air between them sat the strap and the wipes and the part of the plan that had worked too well until it didn't. Detective Brooks, the Basel liaison, said over the radio, Lang has counsel. The envelope contained 25,000 euros, serials recorded. He denies knowledge of any pouch. Your UV stills are already a hit with my sergeant. Good, I said. Tell your sergeant to laminate them if he wants to make converts. The platform thinned. Commuters took their minutes and left. The ritual folded itself back into ordinary. I walked the empty length of carriage 7 once more, the way people revisit rooms after guests are gone. The suspect decoy still wore its red band. Its handle smelled faintly of citrus and embarrassment. I peeled the band, logged the removal, and lifted the case to the upper rack. It belonged to nobody. Its job was done. At door B, the rack bar gleamed the way stainless does when it remembers the last hand that polished it. The blind strip beneath the pillar looked smaller now that the night had used it up. I ran the UV torch once, ritual more than need. A few blue freckles winked back, faint, a constellation losing its audience. I let them be. Mercer joined me for the indulgence of looking at the place where his day had almost been rewritten. You ever ride a train as just a person? He asked, voice low. When the timetable changes, I said, which is another way of saying rarely. He nodded. I'll keep the blue Z on the base, he added, as if admitting to a superstition. It brought me luck. Luck is just evidence that survived, I said, and meant it kindly. The plainclothes who had shadowed Mercer offered me a paper cup of bitter station coffee. I took it, sipped, and let the heat write a small paragraph in my chest. Across the platform, a new express lifted its voice. Somewhere behind me a trolley sang on tile. Zurich does order so well it feels like mercy. I filed the last of the method memo, added a paragraph I write whenever I'm allowed a footnote. Lessons for rolling scenes. 1. Freeze the racks early. Make the cameras polite and present. 2. Exploit the train's physics, threshold audio, strap timing, caster brake, when scales and benches are a station away. 3. Chase residue, not performance. Chalk and flour don't argue. Solvent only moves the theater from one surface to another. 4. Verify by scars. Make a thief argue with a memory smaller than a word. 5. At transfer stops, photograph intent before you argue law. A glowing thumb convinces more gently than a raised voice. I handed a copy to the captain and another to Moreau. The conductor tucked his between the schedule pages like a saint's card. You travel to Paris tonight? I asked him. Tomorrow, he said. Tonight I go home and pretend trains don't exist for 6 hours. Lie beautifully, I said. He laughed once, soft. Station police led Klein past us toward a corridor with a door that understands the sound of handcuffs without needing to hear them. He caught my eye. "It was just time," he said, as if I might correct him. "That's all anything ever is," I said. "And we spend it one way or another." Braun paused of her own accord. "For what it's worth," she said, "I never liked the gloves." "They liked you," I said. "That's why you were hired." She nodded at that, then followed the officers, balance regained even as her future worked to take it. When the last signature dried and the courier's case vanished into the bureaucratic stomach where it belonged, I walked back through 7 to the empty rack. The light over door B ran a clean line along the bar. No hands on it. No weight upon it. Just a horizontal truth where 100 journeys would set their rectangles tomorrow and expect to find them again. Trains are made for trust, Mercer had said at the beginning. He was right. They are also made for the little tests that keep trust honest. Tonight the test had names and numbers and a thumb that remembered light. I set my palm flat to the cool steel, not touching anyone else's handle, and let the car's faint vibration climb my bones. The timetable moved on. The story did what stories do when their edges are tucked and their seals are signed. It ended where it should, with a case that arrived, a ledger that would not be late, and an aisle returned to the business of being a corridor instead of a court. I found Moreau to say goodbye. He tipped his cap, a gesture from another century that still knows how to make the present behave. Then I stepped off the platform, and Zurich took me without comment. We had weighed, photographed, sealed, and signed. We had listened to wheels and straps and the way hands talk when they're sure no one can hear. The rack shone on in the carriage behind me. An unclaimed handle waited, patient as furniture, for tomorrow's trust. The train rolls on, and so do we. Cases close, racks empty. And what began as a single complaint in Milan arrives in Zurich as a ledger that will speak louder than any witness. Detective Brooks fades back into the timetable, leaving only a method memo and an aisle that no longer remembers the hands that tested it. But for us, the listeners, the echo remains. How easily trust can be borrowed, how every handle carries a story, and how even in motion, truth will find its seat. Thank you for spending this journey with us on Somnolent Conspiracies. If you found yourself watching the racks in your mind's eye, or hearing the hum of those wheels as clearly as we did, we invite you to stay with us for the next case. Please subscribe, tap the bell icon, and leave a like to keep traveling with our stories. Every share and comment helps us open another corridor of mystery for you. Until the next investigation, good night, and remember, on every express of trust, keep an eye on the handles.